Your lot.
Welcome to Daniel chapter 2. So open your Bibles to Daniel, and we're going to be studying chapter 2 today. This is a really, really important and exciting chapter. So what has happened so far? What did you learn in Daniel 1? What happened in Daniel 1?
Nebuchadnezzar was a nasty kind of guy.
Nebuchadnezzar isn't a real kind king, right? He's conquering the known world, and he's proud of it. All right. What happened with Daniel and his friends?
When King Nebuchadnezzar went to Jerusalem, destroyed the temple. He also took some of the bronze elements of the temple with
That's
him.
right.
Daniel and three friends were taken as captured.
Yes.
They were taken back, and this time they were taken and put in a special training program.
Okay. Yes.
And in the training program at that time, Daniel said, no, we don't eat that food.
Yes, that's right.
Convinced the overseer of them to allow them to eat their food and give them 30 days and show that they are more alert than the others.
Yeah, actually 10 days. It only took 10 days, right? So Daniel and his friends were taken in the very first captivity, and they were selected because they were part of the nobility, but they were also very smart and astute, and so they were put into the training program. They were given the king's wine and food, and they said, no, this isn't kosher, this isn't what we want to eat, and boldly asked not to eat it. And so God gave Daniel and his friends real favor with the chief of the eunuchs, Ashpenaz, and he went to the king, and he said, okay, I'll let you do it for 10 days, and just to see. And it found that they were even stronger and more robust than all the others who were eating the king's food. And so then they were allowed to do that, all right? And so they were then, at the end of their training, they were found to be even wiser than all of the others, and they were put into this large group of wise men, all right? They're just in the group, they're still in training, but life's not too bad right now. I mean, they've been taken away from home and all that they know, but right now it's okay. All right, they're learning a lot of interesting things. They've got favor, and so it's okay right now. Now we're going to go to Daniel 2. Now remember, Daniel is just kind of snapshots. We're going to see some important snapshots that happen that the Lord wants us to know. All right? So let's read Daniel 1 through 13. Daniel 2, 1 through 13. And I'm going to read it for the sake of this. In the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. And the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and its interpretation. They answered a second time and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see that the word from me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation." The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There's not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh." Because of this, the king was angry and very furious, and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed. And they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. All right, let's look at this closely. Nebuchadnezzar is pretty young. He's about 25 years old. But he's very bright and astute. He inherited from his father this group of old, established men and advisors. He probably didn't really trust them. And he wanted to see who could cut it and who was just conning him. Some commentators say that he asked them what the dream was because he had forgotten it. I think actually his spirit was troubled because he did remember the dream and he couldn't sleep because of it. And he was very, very upset to know what it meant. Now, note that up to this point, up till verse 4, the text is in Hebrew. We spoke about that a little bit before. It now switches to Aramaic. During and after Daniel's time, Aramaic was an international language. It was the common diplomatic and business language of the nations, and it was understood by the Gentiles and by the Jews. Actually, Jesus spoke Aramaic as well. Since chapters 2 through 7 of Daniel deal with Jehovah's rule over the Gentiles, Daniel wrote those chapters in the language that the Gentiles could understand. Had he written them in Hebrew, their message would have been missed by most Gentiles at that time. All right, so verse 4. So he's brought he's had this dream, and he's brought all of his wise men in. But obviously he hasn't brought all of them, just the top guys, right? Because Daniel wasn't there. We're going to see that he wasn't there. And the king said to them, "I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream." So, first of all, who were the Chaldeans? They were the priestly class of the Babylonian religion. But the term is often used to include all the wise men. The term, and then we see, first they go, "O king, live forever." Well, that is just a classic Oriental greeting. That was protocol. That's how you started when you talked to the king. "O king, live forever." That's how you're supposed to start. They had evidently been asked to interpret dreams before, because they weren't surprised by the request to interpret a dream. But what was different about this time?
He has to have them tell him what the dream was.
Right. He wanted them to tell him what he had dreamed. Now that had never happened before. And so what was their reaction?
Said nobody can do it.
Oh, nobody's ever asked anybody to do that before, right?
The sorcerers and so forth wanted to know what the dream was so they could make up their own.
That's right. That's right. They wanted to make up if you tell them a dream, they could make up some interpretation of it, right? But he figured if they could predict the future by interpreting dreams, they ought to be able to look into the past and tell him his dream. What would happen if they didn't?
If they couldn't come up with a dream interpreted, he ordered their death.
Right.
All.
He said, he said they would be cut in pieces and their houses would be made into an ash heap. Well, in other words, will be the end of them. Notice starting verse 7, so they're starting to negotiate now, and they're starting to get worried. Verse 9 says, if you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. Now listen to this. This kind of gives you an inkling of what he thought of them. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. That tells us that, yeah, maybe he didn't really trust them and didn't really trust their words, right? He might have suspected some previous advice that he'd received from them. And so this was the only way that he could get them. He could trust their interpretation. All right, verse 10. So they answered and said, there's not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. They weren't even willing to give it a try. Now, who did they say could know such things? Verse 11.
The gods.
The gods. What?
Not the God.
I thought they claimed to hear from the gods, right? They said they heard from the gods. So had they been lying? Why don't they just ask the gods and they'll tell them what the dream was, right? And then verse 12, because of this, the king was angry and very furious and just said, kill them all. Just get rid of them. They're all worthless. I don't trust them. Just kill them all. All right? Now, we see that the decree went out and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. So that tells us that Daniel wasn't there. He didn't know what was going on. Daniel and his friends were new members of this group, but because the decree was for all the wise men, they were included. So as I said before, up till now, things were looking pretty good. And then all of a sudden, they're coming to kill him. Right? This is a great shock. They thought life was going to be okay in this new country. But now they're seeking them to kill them. Let's read verse 14 and on. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He declared to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree of the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel, and Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. And then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we ask of you. For you have made known to us the king's matter. Here we see great boldness on the part of Daniel. He's probably only 18 years old, and he doesn't know what happened in the king's court, so he asks the captain of the king's guard what's going on. And so he tells him, he explains to him what has transpired and what's happening and why the king wants to kill all of the wise men. So Daniel says, he could tell that Arioch really didn't want to be doing this. And so he says, do you suppose the king would give just a little bit of time? Would you go tell him that there's someone who might be able to interpret his dream and tell him his dream? And King Nebuchadnezzar really wanted to know what the dream was and what the interpretation was. And so when he went to him, he said, okay, I'll give you just a little bit of time to see if you can find someone. Then what did Daniel do?
We talked about this to pray.
Right, he said, guys, we need to have a prayer meeting. Gathered them together and said, hey, we've got to pray. This is what's happening. And we really need wisdom from God. And so they all gathered together. They had a prayer meeting deep into the night. And then when Daniel fell asleep, the Lord did reveal to him what the dream was and its interpretation. Notice after the Lord sent it to him, he begins his prayer just exalting God's wisdom. This is just a wonderful prayer here. It's one that we could open our prayer times with and write in your journal, because it's just a wonderful prayer. I've marked it in my Bible. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. So whenever we need wisdom about a really difficult situation, we go to the source of all wisdom and ask him. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. And we're going to see that he's going to tell Nebuchadnezzar that you're in your position because God put you there. And so on with some other kings as well. And he does that today as well. Sometimes we just really don't understand why different rulers or presidents or whatever are in charge, but God's got a plan, and God is in charge. He sets up kings and removes kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. And that's what we seek when we're studying his word now. Just, Lord, give us knowledge, give us understanding. Help us to just interpret this correctly so that you would increase our knowledge and understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things, and he knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. Only with God. He can see the past, the present, the future. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, because he gave him wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we ask of you. Just a question. If you have something going on, something maybe difficult, do you gather your friends and have a prayer meeting? Sometimes, but often we don't, do we? We might pray and ask the Lord, but we've got friends who know the Lord, and there's just power in prayer. And just coming together to say, hey, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. I really need wisdom. I need understanding. Would you help me to pray about it? Right? All right, verse 24. Therefore, Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king its interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed came thoughts of what would be after this. And he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. All right, so Daniel goes to Arioch and said, take me before the king. And so it says that in haste, he grabs Daniel and he runs to the king. And then, what does he say? In verse 25.
I found a man who can tell you the exile from Judah can tell you.
Notice he says, I found a man. No, he wants to get some of the credit, right? I found a man that can help you. All right. And then, so he brings Daniel before the king, and the king is kind of surprised. I mean, here's this young kid, probably about 18 years old, who comes boldly before the king and says that he can tell him the dream and its interpretation. I think Nebuchadnezzar was probably pretty skeptical, don't you? You know, but he agrees to let him tell him. I wanted to point out that he says here, first of all, he says that no wise men can do it, can show the king. Only God can. The God in heaven. There is a God in heaven. They've had these multiple gods there in Babylon, right? There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. And he is known to you what will be in the latter days. Not all Bibles say in the latter days, but this is a very important phrase. I believe the NIV says in days to come. So
in the future.
In the future, okay. In the latter days, in the future, in days to come. That phrase occurs 14 times in the Old Testament, and it always refers to end times events, okay, in the latter days. And then he says, you had a dream, and to you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts of what would be after this. And he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. And then he takes the time to tell him that, it doesn't take credit for himself. He said, it's not because of me, I'm not special, it's God that gave it to me. He wants Nebuchadnezzar to know that. Not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but God in heaven wants you to know what's going to happen in the future. All right, any questions on that part? I should stop and ask questions. No? All right.
You had mentioned that Nebuchadnezzar wasn't very old himself.
Right, Nebuchadnezzar's only like 25.
So he's only around 25, and Daniel's around 18. Here he has someone younger than him
Right,
coming to tell him.
a captive no less,
Yeah.
right? So he's king of the known world at this time, and here's this captive from Judah coming and telling him that he can interpret the dream. So I don't think he really believed it until Daniel told him.
This is a time because hostility is David and his friends. Because David becomes friendly with Nebuchadnezzar, takes a lot of David and so forth. And also Nebuchadnezzar starting to think about the God in heaven rather than the other gods.
Yes, yes. This is the beginning of when Nebuchadnezzar's going to see that maybe it isn't all because of his own might and power, but that there is a God in heaven that can reveal things to him. All right, let's look at the dream and its interpretation. Now you can look at your chart. Daniel interprets the dream. You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken in pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom. Who? The God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power and the might and the glory, and into whose hand he has given, wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with the soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. A great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. All right. So I've given you a chart of this statue. First of all, who did Daniel say gave Nebuchadnezzar his power? God. God gave him his power. God in heaven gave him his power. Remember, he was the ruler of the entire known world at that time. Now, how many kingdoms do we see here represented by the image?
4.
4, okay. Now,
Actually, there's five.
well, actually 5, sort of 5. Although the fourth one is kind of still all one, yes.
So
So-
what do you say, 5 or 6?
I say 4.
4?
I say 4. Yeah.
The fifth one is the
It's-
second coming of Christ, that's king.
That's, but it's still there.
It's still part of the Roman Empire as well. So, anyway, we're going to talk about these kingdoms.
Okay.
We're going to look at what the statue was made out of. First of all, what did the head of gold represent?
The head, which is
I'm sorry?
Babylon.
Babylon, that's right. It was Babylon. The subsequent verses tell us that the other parts of the statue represent 3 more kingdoms that are yet future. Now, how in the world do we know what these kingdoms were?
What?
How do we know? I mean, this doesn't tell us really. How do we know what these kingdoms were? From history.
Yes.
We know from history. We know the exact dates they came into power. We know that each one of them just conquered the one before. And so we know that all this happened by history. But look at the dates here. well, you can even look on your other thing, but during the kingdom of Babylon is when this dream was and when Daniel gave its interpretation. So all of the other things happened in the future, after Daniel. Now, why do you suppose that gold was Babylon?
Gold is pure.
Gold is pure. Oh, also I wanted to note that, want you to see that in this statue, you see that it goes from more valuable to less valuable, right? Gold, then silver, bronze, iron. However, it also goes from softer to stronger. You know, gold is really soft, okay? So it goes from weaker to stronger in the statue as well. Marduk, the chief god of Babylon, was called a god of gold. Also, Babylon used gold extensively in its buildings, in its images, and its shrines. In fact, Herodotus, who was a Jewish historian, went to Babylon 90 years after the era of Nebuchadnezzar, and he wrote that he was astonished at the amount of gold there. Even the walls and the buildings were overlaid with gold. So they were really proud of their gold, and they're the god of gold. And so that was really appropriate that Babylon was the head of gold. Now, what did the chest and arms of silver represent? You see on here?
That's the version.
The kingdom of Medo-Persia, or the Medes and the Persians. Now, this was really appropriate that there be the two arms, because it was a coalition. It was two distinct peoples, but the Medes and Persians were united together in 550 BC under the same king to form one great power. So that's why you see two arms, but it was a coalition of two different nations, or two distinct peoples. Silver was a fitting representation of the Medo-Persian kingdom, because in ancient times, silver signified money, for silver was the standard of value and the medium of exchange. Medo-Persia became noted for basing its power on money, which was collected through an extensive tax system. This prophecy of the dream was fulfilled when Medo-Persia conquered Babylon in 539 BC. So this kingdom conquered Babylon, and then they ruled until 331 BC. What was the belly and thighs of bronze? Kingdom of Greece. One belly subdivided into two thighs was an excellent way for God to portray the Grecian kingdom ahead of time. Now, Alexander the Greek went out and he destroyed all the known world, and once he unified his kingdom, and then he died at a very young age. His kingdom was actually divided among his four main generals. However, only two of the divisions played any important role in history. And so we see that it was originally the belly altogether, and then it was divided into the two thighs. These two divisions were headquartered in Syria and Egypt. And this part of the prophetic dream was fulfilled when Greece conquered Persia in 331 BC. Why did God represent Greece with bronze? The Greeks developed this metal highly and used it extensively in their implements of war. And so we see that their kingdom was characterized by bronze. Now, what do we learn about the fourth kingdom? Rome, kingdom of Rome. It's divided, it's a divided kingdom. There's two legs. And it will be partly strong and partly fragile. This would be the Roman Empire. God's portrayal of Rome with two legs is apt, for the ancient Roman Empire ruled extensive areas of both the western and eastern divisions of the world. In fact, in 364 AD, the Roman Empire was divided politically into two divisions: the Western Roman Empire, with Rome as its capital, and the Eastern Roman Empire, with Constantinople as its capital. And so this aspect of the dream was fulfilled when Rome conquered Greece in 146 BC. Iron was an excellent designation of Rome for at least two reasons. First, ancient Rome was noted for its use of iron in its military weaponry. Second, as Daniel indicated in 240, just as iron is able to crush gold, silver, and bronze because it's stronger, so Rome would crush and scatter the ancient world. Ancient Rome did just that through its great military strength. Now, what do the 10 toes represent? Kingdom of revived Roman Empire, yes. The Antichrist rules with 10 kings. So we've got 10 toes represented by 10 kings. So what do we learn about them? It says that Rome, well, first of all, we see that through here, Medo-Persia conquered Babylon, and Greece conquered Persians, and Rome conquered Greece. Rome was actually never conquered. And so there's still vestiges of Rome and leadership in Rome, but Rome was never conquered like these other nations were. It just broke into fragments. As we move down the image, we move later in time. The toes represent the final stage of Gentile world dominion. Just as iron is strong, so the final stage of the Roman Empire would be strong militarily. And just as clay is characterized by brittleness, so the final stage of the Roman Empire would be characterized by division. So we see there's different groups of people that would combine with one another to form the final stage of the empire. But they're not going to adhere completely to one another. Just as iron and clay don't combine completely with one another. So,
Interesting in there, 44 or 43, where it says the iron will not mix with clay, so the people is a mixture of people,
that's right,
and they will not remain united.
that's right. So they appear to be, yeah, they appear to come together as a coalition, but they still got a lot of problems, and they don't really adhere to one another as one unit, right? So it would appear that the final stage of the Roman Empire would consist of a confederation of several nations. And these nations would combine forces for the sake of military strength. But they would not combine to the extent of losing their national identities and distinctives. And so that's why, they still, one wants to be in charge and the other wants to be in charge. And they come together to make a military strength, but they really don't get along that well. Right? They really don't get along that well.
They come together to fight one that raised its head in Germany, World War II.
Yeah, a lot of them came together. And
They all came together to fight Germany. But what happened then shortly after that?
then one took charge of this and the other took charge of this, and each one wanted to be more powerful than the other. And so that's just what we see happening with the nations in the world.
United States was in on that too.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And we often wonder, where does the United States fall in all of this? But we're kind of a mixture of, Italians and of the Europeans, of the European nations as well. So I think we're going to have some part in it, but we don't know for sure what it is. But then, so we see this. This is in the future. I'm going to go to that in a minute. Yes. Okay. Verse 43. As you saw, I want to go to 44. 44, and in those days, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. Now, one thing I didn't like about this image, and I've seen others online, is it left out the big stone that came and destroyed. Sometimes you can look, if you look up online, a depiction of the statue, there's also the stone that comes down and hits the feet and destroys the statue.
I'd say the second coming.
Yes, that's the second coming of Christ. That's right. That's right. So when the stone strikes the statue, all of the previous kingdoms are destroyed and swept away without a trace. Yes. So that's why a lot of these things are going to happen in Revelation. That's when the stone is going to come down. The nations will band together to go against Christ. And so that's why you have to understand what's happening in Daniel to be able to understand the pictures in Revelation as well. And also in Luke and in different places about the end times. So the climax of the vision is also told in verses 34 and 35. Let's look at those. I think it depicts it a little different, a little better. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken in pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. It's interesting that the Babylonians pictured the earth as a great mountain. In fact, they called the earth Mountain House. So in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he saw a stone detach itself from the mountain and with great speed hit the statue and crush it entirely. And after the stone strikes the statue, the stone becomes a mountain that grows until it fills the whole earth. This represents the coming kingdom of God that will be ruled by Jesus. So this is what's going to happen in Revelation in the end times. This is another depiction of Jesus coming down from heaven and destroying the earth's kingdoms and then setting up his kingdom on the earth. Now, also notice that this says that it's going to be on the earth. And one reason that it's depicted as a mountain, it was telling them that it would be an earthly kingdom. So Jesus is going to set up on the earth. Yes, Nanny?
There's a point here, excuse me, in the New Testament, the only thing that we don't know when it's going to happen is the rapture
Yes.
that Paul described. But once the rapture occurs, we know that 7 years, then will be the tribulation.
That's right.
On it. And at the end of the tribulation, we know that Christ will come to earth. Now in the rapture, Christ does not come on earth. He is in the sky.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So Jesus will come in the sky, we'll be caught up with him, and then the Holy Spirit's going to be gone. If the Holy Spirit's not here, all hell's going to break loose. We're restraining evil on this earth.
Yeah, he'll reign for 1,000 years.
That's right.
And then that's when the final judgment will occur.
Yes, yes. That's in the whole study of Revelation. And this is pointing to Revelation, so you can understand Revelation better if you understand this. Also, I think it's interesting to know this dream is a vision of the transfer of world authority from the hands of God's people, the Jews, into the hands of Gentile rulers. You've heard that we are now in the times of the Gentiles. And this is when it started. The times of the Gentiles began at this time. We are still in the times of the Gentiles. From this time on, the center of the world dominion switched from Jerusalem to Babylon, and then it was successively transferred to conquering Gentile nations. Now, have you ever wondered what happened between the Old and the New Testaments? Look at your handouts there. The dream tells us what happened in history during the intertestamental time. Malachi was written between 450 and 400 BC, during the time of the Medo-Persian Empire. And then we didn't hear anything else until the New Testament. And Jesus was born during the rule of Rome. So there you can see exactly what happened during that time between Malachi and the time of Jesus.
Where is, it's on
It's just on your handout there.
the handout. You have to be a
Here it
little
is.
more specific.
Be more
You have to
specific.
slow people.
Okay. Well, we see that Daniel took place at the beginning of the Medo-Persian Empire. And then Malachi was written during that time as well. But then Greece happened. Greece destroyed the Medo-Persians, and then Rome destroyed Greece. And then Jesus was born. So this is what happened during the time between Malachi and the New Testament. Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and Rome. And so then that's why during Jesus' time, there were so many Greek customs, and the world was Greek. The Greek had come in, and they wanted everybody to worship the Greek gods and to speak Greek, and that's why you see so much of that in Jesus' time, is because then Greece was the world dominion before Rome took over.
Predominantly part of the Bible, or the majority of the Bible is written in Greek.
Right, and the Bible was written in Greek, right. And that's why the apostles wrote things in Greek, because Greece came in and they wanted everybody to speak Greek. And that's when that happened, is between the Testaments. All right? So, if you ever just thought about that, to kind of tie everything together, that's what was happening during that time. So we are now living in the time of the toes. Okay? We're now living in the time of the toes.
Iron and clay. Don't get Greek to me.
And the crushing of the statue is still in the future, when Jesus will come to set up his kingdom on the earth, as totally described in the book of Revelation. You study the book of Revelation, and that's kind of the end of the story that we know. But it's all ties it together. So we can't go into detail about the book of Revelation, but that you can just see how this all ties together, and it's history. This is what happened in history, and that's why different things were as they were in Jesus' time, is because of the Greeks and the Romans during that time. How they influenced the world. Okay? All right, let's finish Daniel 2. Here it is. All right, Daniel, verse 46. Now we're going to see King Nebuchadnezzar's reaction. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and paid homage to Daniel, and commanded that an offering and incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, "Truly, your God is God of gods and Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery." Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. And then Daniel made a request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained at the king's court. Keep that in mind, that Daniel remained at the king's court.
This is where jealousy begins.
That's right. So, what was King Nebuchadnezzar's reaction? The ruler of the known world fell on his face prostrate before Daniel. He acknowledged the power of Daniel's God. Notice he doesn't say, my God or embrace God, but he acknowledges the power of Daniel's God. He's beginning to have an inkling of the power of Daniel's God. And then he promoted him and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and the chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Now again, how old was Daniel?
Daniel was 10 to 12 years old when he was captured.
Yeah, well, or maybe 14. Anyway, he's probably around 18. He's a young man. Now, do you suppose he was popular with the wise men?
Probably not so much.
Probably not so much. They probably weren't real crazy about this. But, however, he did save their lives, right?
Yeah.
So, you know.
That's quickly forgotten.
And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were also promoted at Daniel's request. So, that's a very exciting chapter. Any questions?
He remained in the royal court, but is that the time that you got here that says Daniel, 69 years of ministry? That's the timeline for he remained in the royal court?
Well, yes, and it also goes into, you'll see that it goes partially into the Medo-Persian Empire as well. You know, this is the 70 years of Jewish captivity. But yeah, he will remain in the king's court. And we're going to see that he will also play an important role later on as well. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments about Daniel 2? Wait. Would you turn off the video?
How far are you going to do?
I'm sorry?
How far are you going to do?
I'm trying to do just one chapter.